Okay, now that you're an expert on the English system, it's time to become an expert on the metric system. And the metric system is way better. Way better. So I think you're gonna really like this. All right. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna give you a PowerPoint and we're gonna kind of talk our way through it. Now, what I'm expecting you to do on all of these videos is I'm expecting you to stop and take notes. So pause the video, write down the conversions, write down the examples. Keep going, then come back and resume the video, then pause it and write so that you have basically this PowerPoint and your notes, okay? All right, so we're gonna use the metric system. Now, you had to learn to use an English system ruler. You've also got to be able to use a metric system ruler because in elementary school, you got to be able to use both. Now, let me show you the difference in the two. Here's the English ruler we talked about last time. All right, now this one, basically down here, this is the English system. All right, so remember what we talked about. Between any whole numbers, you got 16 little tick marks. So when you're measuring something, like if you're measuring from 0 all the way to here, so if your segment went like this, oops, that's terrible. Let's clear that. Suppose your measurement went way here and it went like 2 little tick marks past 2. We're going to pretend like that's a segment. It's kind of sad. It's hard to draw with this little stylus to get it exact. Do you understand that that would be 2? And then if you're on an English, if you're doing inches, remember how many equally sized pieces make a whole on the English system is 16. And I'm 2 past that. And then you'd have to reduce it. So on your test, I'd expect you to tell me that that segment is 2 1/8 inches. Now, if you leave off the unit, I'm going to count it wrong because is it 2 1/8 feet, centimeters, inches, miles? You have to, so a measurement is a number and a unit. I have to have both. Now, let me show you why the metric ruler is way easier. Count how many tick marks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 between each one. So now my bottom number is going to be 10. Not 16. So look what happens right here. Suppose again, I'm measuring a segment that's like 2 little tick marks past 2. Okay, then it would be 2 and what? 2/10. But look why this is so much nicer. How do you write 2 2/10 as a decimal? Remember? So on a metric system, if it's tick marks past, it really is point and that many tick marks. Because see, this denominator is this place value. But see, this is not 2.2 on an English ruler because this denominator is not a 10. So the English system is much harder to work with than the metric system. So on the ruler, the bottom number on a metric is always going to be 10. On an English, it's going to be 16. And then you have to change it. All right. So 10 tick marks versus 16 tick marks. And since we work in base 10, our number system, this one makes way more sense. So on a test, I might give you and say, measure this using the English system and measure this using the metric system and give you a ruler that's got both on it. Okay. So make sure that you can do that. That's one thing you've got to be able to do. All right, now let's go talk about some things about the metric system because it's much easier to work with, but most people are uncomfortable with it because you don't normally use it every day. But I think you're going to really like it. All right, here's one thing that's really nice. You got to measure the same things: length, weight, and capacity. But here's the lovely part about the metric system. When you're doing length, the basic word that you use is meter. A meter. Now, a meter, if you look at any door in your room, in a school room, at your home, from the doorknob to the floor is about how long a meter is. It's about like a yard. Okay. Now, remember all those things you had to memorize with the metric system? You've only got to memorize one thing. I mean, with the English system, you've only got to memorize one number with the metric system. 10. You're done. You're done. Not 5,280, 16, 8, 2, 4, 1,760, 2,000. No, one number, 10. That's it. Now, what you get to memorize with these prefixes. Now, I've got these prefixes in order from small to big. Now, notice when you're doing length, do you see how they all end with meter? That's how I know I'm doing length. Look at these prefixes. Milli is the smallest. Centi is the next biggest. Deci, that's a decimeter. Then a meter. Then you got a decameter. You got a hectometer. And you've got a kilometer or a kilometer. Now, you're going to have to help kids know what these are. And like I said, a meter is about from a doorknob to the floor. Now, remember I told you only got to memorize 10? 10 millimeters make a centimeter. Put 10 centimeters together and you get a decimeter. Put 10 decimeters end to end and you got a meter. Put 10 meters in a row and you've got a decameter. Put 10 decameters end to end, you got a hectometer or a hectometer, and then put 10 of those end to end, you got a kilometer. So think about it. If you went from the doorknob to the floor, if you took that long length and you subdivided it into 10 little parts that were the same length, that would be a decimeter. So it's about like a whiteboard marker. All right, well, if you took that whiteboard marker, right here's a whiteboard marker. So if you put these 10 of these end to end, that'd be about from the doorknob down to the floor. If I took this and I cut this into 10 congruent pieces, that would get me a centimeter. And if you hold up your pointer finger, that fingernail right there, the width of that fingernail is about a centimeter. If you took that length and divided it into 10 little pieces, that would be a millimeter. So a millimeter is about how thick a dime is. So if you took 10 dimes and stacked them up, that'd be a centimeter. If you took 10 of these and put them end to end, that's going to be a decimeter. If you put 10 of these end to end, now you're up to a meter. Well, what if you put 10 of those meters end to end? So a decameter is about the length of a school bus. Okay. Now think about, remember I said that a meter is about a yard? Now I want you to think about this. If I've got a meter, we'll talk about that in a second. It's about the length of a football field. It's about 100 of those. And a kilometer is comparable to a mile. It's a little less than a mile. So when you're in another country besides America, they're not going to say it's 60 miles to the next town. They're going to tell you how many kilometers it is to the next town. It's about 5/7 of a mile. Okay. Now let me show you something and make sure we're clear. All right. Look at this. I want to make sure we illustrate this pretty well. Let's clear that. All right. If right here, if from here to here was 1 meter. All right. So that's 1 meter. All right. Now, do you see that if I cut this into 10 little pieces, each of these, remember what's a little smaller than a meter, all right, is a decimeter. So I'd have a decimeter here, and I'd have a decimeter here. So all of these would be decimeters. All right. So you see there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these. Well, a little smaller than a decimeter is a centimeter. So if I took this decimeter and I started cutting it into like 1, 2, can't draw very well, 3, 4. If I cut it into 10 pieces, every one of those would be a centimeter. So do you see there'd be 10 of those in that? If I did it again, I'd get 10 more little pieces. If I cut it again, I'd get 10 more little pieces. So do you understand that inside of each of these 10 would be 10? So there'd be 100 of these in one of those. All right. So look what it says. 10 millimeters is a centimeter. Then 10 centimeters is a decimeter. 10 decimeters is a meter, and so forth. All right. So let me show you something. One of the ways I used to remember it was this. I think this is one of the easiest things to do. You need to memorize the prefixes. Now, I put them on some steps and I'll show you why. The biggest one is a kilo. All right. That's the biggest one we're going to talk about. It's not the biggest one that exists, but it's the biggest one we're going to talk about. Then a little smaller than a kilo is a hecto. A little smaller than a hecto is a deca. Then we had meter. Then a little smaller than the meters, the decimeter, the centimeter, and the millimeter. Now, in a minute, we're gonna measure weight, and that's going to be measured in grams. Well, then it's going to be a kilogram instead of a kilometer. The prefixes are the same. So once you memorize the metric prefixes, you got them all memorized. Now, here's the thing. If you go from kilometer to hectometer, that's a 10. If you go from hectometer to decameter, that's another 10. So 1 kilometer is 10 hectometers. 10 hectometer is a decameter. 10 decameters is a meter. Well, what if instead you jump from here all the way down to there? So if I go down 2 steps, that's not going to be a 10 to the first, that's going to be a 10 to the second. In other words, 100. So there are 100 of these in one of those. The same way here. This one, 1, 2, 3. So there are 10 of these. They're 10 millimeters make a centimeter. 10 centimeters make a decimeter, and 10 decimeters make a meter. So if you're going to go all the way from here to there, I want you to count how many steps you walked. 1, 2, 3. In other words, 10 to the third, which is 1,000. So there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter. Okay, so I want you to memorize these prefixes. And these prefixes right here are big down to small. And it always takes 10 of one to get to the next one, 10 of this one to get to that one, 10 of that one to get to that one. So 1 step up, it takes 10. If you're going 2 steps, it takes 100. If you're going 3 steps, it'd be 10 to the third or 1,000. If you're going 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'd take 10,000, 10 to the fourth. Now let's go look at how you work the problems. They're very simple. They're way easier than the English system. Now, the same things are still true. Big to small, you multiply. Small to big, you divide. And you go from number to blank. All right, so if I were going to work metric system, the first thing I would do is I would write down my staircase with just the prefixes on there. Now look what I'm doing. Number to blank. So I'm going meter to centimeter. All right, here's my meter. And here's my centimeter. Now, am I going big to small or small to big? Remember, you're in order from big to small. So I'm going from meter down to centimeter. So I'm going big to small. Big to small, I multiply. Now, how do I know what to multiply by? How many steps did you walk down? Now don't count the step you're standing on, count how many you went. I went 1, 2, 2. Tells you the power. 10 to the 2 is 100, so I multiplied by 100. And 2 times 100 is 200. All right, look at this one. I'm going millimeter to centimeter. All right. Now notice what happens. They all end in an M. So kilometer would be KM. Hectometer would be HM. Decameter would be DKM. We'll talk about that in a second. Centimeter is CM. So I'm going from millimeter. Remember, I'm going from number to blank. So millimeter to centimeter. Milli to centa. All right. Am I going big to small or small to big? Aren't I going from small to big? So I divide. How many steps did you walk? You walked up 1 step. So that's why I'm dividing by 10 to the first. And 250 divided by 10 is 25. Now notice what happens when you multiply and divide by powers of 10. All you're really doing is moving the decimal point. You don't even need a calculator. You can use one, but you don't even have to have a calculator. All right, look at this one. I'm going from, now let me show you something. Do you see that D, deca, and deci both start with a D? So they just couldn't put DM on both. So decimeter is DM, and decameter is DKM. Now some books put DAM for obvious reasons with elementary children. That's probably not the best shortcut. I'd put DKM because they'll laugh if you put DAM. Okay. But the way I remembered it was the more letters for the bigger one. Okay. So on this one, remember, I'm going from kilometer all the way down to decimeter. Excuse me, I'm going from decimeter to kilometer. I'm not going left to right. I'm going from number to blank. So I'm going from decimeter, that's this one, all the way to kilometer. So let's see how many steps I've got to walk. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I walked up 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why it was 10 to the 4th, which is 10,000. So that's how I knew the number. How did I know to divide? Because when I'm going small to big, when I'm going up the steps, small to big, I divide. So if I divide that number by 10,000, remember what it's going to do. You can use a calculator, but isn't it going to move the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the left? So all I'm doing with the metric is just move the decimal around. All right, try this one. Hectometer to meter. All right, here's hectometer. I'm going down 1, 2. So 10 to the 2 or 100. Now, how do I know to multiply or divide? Because I'm going big down to small. So that's why I multiplied by 100 and got 23. See, it moved that decimal 2 places to the right. I'm going from centimeter to decameter. Remember, DKM is the bigger one. Okay, so I'm going from number to blank. All right, so centimeter, here's centimeter to decameter. So 1, 2, 3. So that's how I know it's 10 to the 3 or 1,000. And then because I'm going from small to big, I divide. And so when I divide that by 3, it's going to move the decimal 3 places to the left. Okay. So big to small, you multiply, small to big, you divide. The number of steps you go up or down tells you the power on your 10. I mean, how simple is that? Isn't it nice? Now, what if instead of measuring length, what if you measured weight? Well, here's the lovely part. It's the same. Only this time, instead of meters, you have grams. So your main unit is a gram, but see, the prefixes are the same. Milligram, centigram, decigram, decagram, hectogram, kilogram. And again, the longer one has more letters. Now, these are just some everyday things to kind of help kids. If you let them hold a paper clip, that's about a gram. So it's really light. A kilogram is about like 2 pounds. So you might hand them something that weighs 2 pounds, let them feel what a kilogram weighs like. And then something, a milligram, you really can't even tell you're holding. It's like a feather. It's really, really light. Now, what if you have to do conversions? It's the same. See, it's the same stair step because the prefixes are the same. So I would do it exactly the same way. Big to small, you multiply. Small to big, you divide. So I'm going gram to centigram. All right, gram would be right here. See, that's my base unit. So gram down to centa. So 1, 2, 10 to the 2 or 100. Big to small, I multiply. So 2 times 100 is 200. So I want you to go back and notice all I did was change like from meters to grams. These examples are just like the ones before, except they're in weight rather than in length. Or I'm going from milligram to centigram. All right, am I going big to small or small to big? Okay, milli to centa is 1 step, so 10 to the 1. How do I know whether to multiply or divide? If I'm going from milli to centa, I'm going small to big, so I divide. So I got 25. All right, what if I did the next one? Remember, I'm not going left to right, I'm going number to blank. So I'm going from deci, here's deci, to kilo. So 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So that's why it's 10 to the 4th, which is 10,000. And notice, when the power is a 4, you got 4 zeros. When the power is a 2, you got 2 zeros. And again, I'm going from small to big, so that's why I divided. So that moved the decimal. Remember, it's understood to be at the back, 4 places to the left. 448 10,000ths. All right. Remember, we're going from hecto down to gram, so that's big to small, so we multiply. And then hecto to gram, you'd be walking 1, 2 steps. So that's why it's 10 to the 2 times 100. And then here you'd be going from centa to deca. All right. So centa to deca would be 1, 2, 3. So 10 to the 3rd. Okay. So the metric system to me is way easier than the English system. All right. What if you wanted to measure capacity? Remember the English, that was like cups and pints and quarts. Well, here it's liters. Now you're more familiar with liters thanks to Coca-Cola. All right. Nobody freaks out because they buy their Coke in liters instead of gallons. See, they should just change and be done with it. So this time, the only difference is instead of having meter right here or gram, I've got liter. But again, this is small to big. Milliliter, centiliter, deciliter, just like before. So again, you would show the kids, like, you can get one of those 1 liter Cokes, or you can bring in a 2 liter Coke and be half of it and show them how much a liter is. If you get a thing of Tylenol for an infant, they have those little droppers, those little syringe looking droppers. You could fill it with some colored water or with the Tylenol and show them how tiny a milliliter is. Then a kiloliter would be if you basically had 4 bathtubs filled with water or 1 giant kiddie pool. That'd be about a kiloliter of water. Okay. All right. So let's go look at this. How do you work the problems? Same. See, prefixes are the same. It's just if you're measuring length, right here is a meter. If you're measuring weight, right there is a gram. If you're measuring capacity, right there is a liter. All right, number to blank. All right, so I'm at liter and I'm walking to milliliter. So that's 1, 2, 3. So 10 to the 3rd is 1,000. I'm going from big down to small, so you multiply. So that's how I got 2,500. All right, what about the next one? Again, number to blank, so I'm going centiliter to milliliter. So centiliter to milliliter is only 1 step. So 10 to the 1, which is just 10. I'm going from big to small, so I'm multiplying, I'd get 15. All right, kiloliter to decaliter. All right, kiloliter to decaliter. So kilo to deca, 1, 2. Remember, I knew it was deca because it's got 3. The bigger one has 3 letters. All right, well, I went down 1, 2 steps. So 10 to the 2 is 100. I'm going from big to small, so I multiply. So that moved the decimal 2 places to the right, 603 and 2 tenths. And then here, the same kind of thing. I'm going deci to kilo. All right, so let's double check it. number to blank. So the smaller one to the bigger one. Or here's deci. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So 10 to the fourth is 10,000. So that moves the decimal 4 to the left. And see, notice, when you're going from small to big, you divide and it looks kind of like you're going left, and sure enough, the decimal moves to the left. When you're coming down the steps and you're going big to small, you're kind of moving to the right and the decimal moves to the right. So what I want you to do now is I want you to go work the bottom half of that same worksheet that you had before. So you've got to be able to change within the metric system and within the English system. All right. But remember, those two things will not be on the first test. The measurement will be on the second test. Okay. So let's stop sharing the screen. So go finish that worksheet for me and let me know if you have any questions.